This is the live podcast with Manuel, living in full expression. Most of us think we are in competition with everyone else's life. We measure our career against theirs, our relationship against theirs, our pace against theirs, as if we're all running the exact same race. But the Olympic doesn't work that way, and neither does life. The sprinter and the marathoner are both champions, trained for entirely different events, and neither one's medal makes the other one's less real. The uncomfortable truth is that trying to compete in someone else's event doesn't just waste your time, it injures the one event you were actually built for. And living in full expression means discovering your event, training for it fully, and letting your own performance be the only one that counts. I heard a story recently that I have not been able to stop thinking about. A guest speaker at our church on Sunday, a former javelin athlete, was preaching about the Olympic. She was using it as an analogy for a message she was trying to pass across. She said something simple that landed like a truth I had somehow never put into words before. At the Olympic, she says, there's a javelin, a high jumper, the 100 meters, the marathon, and so on. Completely different events, completely different training. And every single winner, no matter the event, walks away called the same thing, an Olympic champion. Then she told a story about a time a friend of hers, a high jumper, couldn't compete and asked her to step in and represent her in the high jump instead. And of course, this is a friend. She accepted and she did it. But what happened was what stopped me. She got injured. Because her whole life, her whole body, and everything about her had been trained for javelin, not high jump. So filling in for someone else's event cost her something real in her own. Welcome to the Live Podcast with me, your host, Manuel. And today, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the event you were actually trained for and what it cost you every time you try to compete in someone else's instead. And so if you're ready, let's get started. So here's the image I want you to hold on to for this entire episode. I want you to picture the Olympic Games. Dozens of events happening across the same days, in the same stadium, under the same 5 rings. The javelin throw is not competing against the marathoner. The high jumper is not measured against the swimmer. Each one has trained for years specifically for their event in a way that would actually be counterproductive for any of the others. Now, a 100-meter sprinter trains explosive power, short, violent burst of output. A marathoner trains endurance, pacing themselves across 2.5 hours. Same sport, broadly, which is running. Completely different bodies, completely different trainings, completely different outcome they are even measuring. But at the end, every single one of them, if they win their event, gets called exactly the same thing, a champion. Now, here's where most of us get life wrong. We treat life like it's one event. We watch someone else's career, someone else's marriage, someone else's visible success, and we measure our own performance against their scoreboard in an event we were never actually trained for. Think about the person who takes over the family business because that's what was expected, when everything in them was built for something else entirely. Think about a person who chooses a certain career path because a parent, a partner, a teacher pushed them there, and who has been quietly exhausted for years, wondering why the efforts that seem to come so easily to others feels like carrying a weight that was never designed for their shoulders. That exhaustion is not a sign that they are not working hard enough. It's a sign they are training for someone else's event. Now, I want to go back to the story I opened this episode with, because the specific detail in it is what makes this real instead of just a niche idea. The speaker I heard was a javelin athlete. Her training for years had been built entirely around one specific motion: the run-up, the release, the follow-through, all engineered for throwing a javelin as far as possible. A friend of hers, a high jumper, was unable to compete in a particular tournament and had asked her to step in and represent her in the high jump instead. She agreed, of course, out of loyalty, out of wanting to help. And in that event, she got injured. Not because she wasn't strong, not because she wasn't a serious athlete, not because she lacked discipline. She got injured because her body had been trained for an entirely different set of movement, an entirely different kind of impact, an entirely different event. And here's the detail I want you to sit with in this episode. That injury didn't just cost her the high jump competition, it affected her own game. She had to recover, which meant time away from the javelin, the actual event she had spent years training for, the one she was genuinely built to excel in. And that's exactly what happens when we step into someone else's event in our own lives. Whether it's out of loyalty, obligation, fear, or simply not knowing any better, the cost is never contained to the borrowed event alone. It bleeds into the one thing you were actually meant to be doing. The recovery time, the burnout, the self-doubt that follows as a mismatched effort, all of it steals from your own race. The friend who asked her to step in wasn't wrong to ask, and the speaker wasn't wrong to want to help either. But wanting to help someone else's event and being trained for it are two entirely different things, and confusing them cost her something real. I want to do something with you right now. Something real. I want you to take a moment to actually sit with each of these, and I'm going to take it layer after layer so that you can fully understand what I'm trying to say to you today. Let's look at layer number one, the surface awareness. Now, let's look at it. What event are you currently running in your actual life that you were never trained for? You were never built for? You were never meant to be running for? Think about where you're putting real effort in, real hours, real energy into a version of success, a career, a role, a way of living that looks like someone else's win, that is not yours. Not what you think the answer should be. I mean, what actually comes up when you ask that honestly. If the honest answer is uncomfortable, I want you to know that that is not weakness. That is an information and a data that we need to work with. Now let's look at layer number two, the root identification. And this is where I go deeper with you. Whose voice puts you in that event in the first place? Whose voice was it that put you in that event in the first place? Was he a parent who had a specific picture of what your life should look like? A partner whose comfort depends on you staying in a certain lane? A teacher, a culture, a community that decided early on which event was worth pursuing and which ones weren't? So when did you first learn that your own natural event, whatever you are actually built for, wasn't good enough, impressive enough, or safe enough to pursue on its own terms? Think about that. And whatever came up for you just now, that is actually where we need to go to right now. That belief was formed to keep you safe, accepted, or approved of. It may have made sense once, it has likely been costing you ever since. Now, having done this, I want us to go to layer number 3. In this layer, we're going to do a separation and a reorientation. And here's the distinction that changes everything. Their event was never a measure of your worth, and your event, however different it looks from theirs, was never a lesser one. So, what evidence do you already have in your own life of the things you were actually trained for? Think about what has come naturally to you, even in small ways, for as long as you can remember. It could be experience, it could be talent, it could be anything that has come naturally to you. Not what you were told to pursue. I mean, what you were quietly built for. And now here comes the real question. What would change if you stopped measuring your performance against an event you were never trained for and started measuring it only against your own previous best in the event you were actually built for? That's the shift. Not comparing less as an act of willpower. It's by recognizing clearly that the comparison was never a fair one to begin with. So here's how you turn what just surfaced into something practical. And I'm going to give you 3 moves that you're going to take to be able to get these results. The move number 1 is this. I want you to name your event. Look back over your life for the things that has quietly, consistently come up to you, even when you weren't trying to impress anyone with it. Not the things you were told to pursue, I mean the things you were actually built for. And I want you to write that down specifically. Now that you've done that, let's go to move number 2. Name whose events you've been playing instead. I want you to be honest about which external voice, a parent, a partner, a teacher, a culture, that have shaped the event you've actually been running. Because naming it doesn't mean blaming them, not at all. It means finally seeing clearly which race you've actually been in. And this is very important because you need to understand whose voice, whose script you've been acting upon. Now, finally, which is last but not the least, is the move number 3, to run the injury audit. Now, I want you to name the specific costs you are currently carrying from playing the wrong event. Exhaustion, resentment, a quiet sense of always falling short despite trying hard. That cost is the injury. It's evidence, not a personal failure. Now, once you've done all these 3, I want you to choose one small specific action this week that trains you for your own event instead. However small that event might look from the outside, it doesn't matter how big or small your role in life's Olympic is. What matters is giving it your full performance. And then if you want to go deeper on this, I've prepared a premium worksheet that walks you through identifying your specific event, tracing whose voice puts you in the wrong one, and building your first training step back towards your own. In conclusion, there are 3 things I want you to walk away from today's episode with. Number 1 is this. You are not in competition with anyone else's event. You never were. Number 2, playing someone else's game, even out of love or loyalty, injures the one game you were actually trained for. And number 3, you will only ever be measured against your own performance, not anyone else's scoreboard. So this week, I want you to name your event. Name whose voice puts you in that wrong one. And take one specific step back towards the training you were actually built for. And with the premium worksheet in the show notes, you can build this out fully. We are all life's Olympic champions. The only thing left to discover is which event you were called to play and to give it everything you have. So go train for your own event this week. This has been the Life Podcast with me, your host, Manuel. And until I come your way in our next episode, keep living in full expression.